What happened to Judah during the reign of Ahaz and why? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 2 Chronicles on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
Today we're going to be discussing 2 Chronicles chapter 28, verses 1 to 8, but before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 2 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 1. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 2 Chronicles chapter 28, beginning at verse 1. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king and reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And he did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord, as his father David had done. For he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel and made molded images for the Baals. He burned incense in the valley of the son of Hinnom, and burned his children in the fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom the Lord had cast out before the children of Israel. And he sacrificed burnt incense on the high places, and on the hills, and under every green tree. Therefore the Lord his God delivered him into the hand of the king of Syria. They defeated him and carried away a great multitude of them as captives, and brought them to Damascus. Then he was also delivered into the hand of the king of Israel, who defeated him with a great slaughter. For Pekah, the son of Remaliah, killed 120,000 in Judah in one day, all valiant men, because they had forsaken the Lord God of their fathers. Zichri, a mighty man of Ephraim, killed Maaseiah, the king's son, Azrikam, the officer over the house, and Elkanah, who was second to the king. And the children of Israel carried away captive of their brethren 200,000 women, sons, and daughters. And they also took away much spoil from them, and brought the spoil to Samaria. In the nation of Israel and Judah, there is great turmoil going on, some of which is unmentioned by the chronicler, but is mentioned in 2 Kings. Israel is in her final throes as a nation, and following the death of Jeroboam II would have 6 kings in her final 29 years. Only 2 of these kings would take the throne upon their father's death, and both would eventually be killed in a coup d'etat after relatively short reigns. Such instability, of course, I believe was sent directly by God as punishment for Israel's idolatry, and would soften them up by their eventual captives in the Assyrians in 722 BC. In Judah, there was a righteous king reigning over Judah, Jotham, the son of Uzziah. Jotham was righteous because he followed in his father's footsteps in seeking after the Lord, with the exception that he did not sinfully go into the temple like Uzziah did. Now, even though Jotham was righteous, the people were not. God blessed Jotham, and through him Judah, though these blessings would be short-lived. The reason for that is, although unmentioned specifically in the text, it appears from putting all the pieces from our study of 2 Kings together that during Jotham's reign there was about a 5-year co-regency of Jotham with his son Ahaz. Co-regencies happen when the current king is sick or unable to discharge his duties, as was the case of Uzziah and Jotham. But they are sometimes also made when the current king goes out to war, and he makes his son a regent, with the regent taking care of the day-to-day affairs of the kingdom while he is out at war with the army. We've seen this in the past, especially in Israel, but in Judah from time to time as well. And so, is a co-regency supported in the text? Yes, for Jotham was a man to go to war with the Ammonites, so it is quite possible that he made Ahaz regent, and he remained such until Jotham's death, which was at the age of 41 in the 16th year of his reign. Regardless of why a co-regency occurred, though, I believe not only does the text of 2 Kings support it, but that it demands it. In 2 Kings 16 verse 1, Ahaz is said to come to power in the 17th year of Pekah, king of Israel. Now, on our timeline, this coincides with that 733 BC, or a full 2 years before Pekah is assassinated by Hoshea. Ahaz is said to have reigned for 16 years, which, if there wasn't a co-regency, would have Ahaz reigning until about 716 BC. However, since Ahaz isn't really mentioned in relation to the fall of Israel, we're going to assume that Ahaz had died by this point. And if that's the case, then Ahaz had a co-regency with his father Jotham that began at about 738 BC. On this point, there will be many scholars who disagree with me, stating that Ahaz had a much longer co-regency with his son Hezekiah than even we will examine. However, we simply don't read of Ahaz being talked about at all during the fall of Israel, and it's not like 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles is the only book that speaks on this matter, for he was also mentioned in 1 Chronicles, and in the future studies we'll see him mentioned in Isaiah, Hosea, and Micah. Thus, I believe it is far likelier that Ahaz had a longer co-regency with Jotham at a time of massive upheaval in the region than he did with Hezekiah, who is the sole king mentioned in relation to the fall of Israel in the north. You can disagree with me on this if you wish, but that's the position we will take in this podcast. Thus, the sole reign of Ahaz would have begun in 733-732 BC with the death of Jotham, but the 16 years of his reign was counted from 738 BC, bringing our timeline for the death of Ahaz down to about 723 BC, a year before the fall of Israel. Both 2 Kings 16 verse 2 and 2 Chronicles 28 verse 1 says that Ahaz was 20 when he took the throne, which would be counted from the 733 date. However, many manuscripts read that Ahaz was 25, an age that would make much more sense, seeing as how Hezekiah would be 25 when he became king, meaning that if Ahaz was 20, Hezekiah would have been born when Ahaz was 11. Now yes, Ahaz would have been 16 when Hezekiah was born if he became king at 25, but this is a far more believable age than 11, so that is the reading we should take. As we've seen throughout our previous studies in 2 Chronicles, when Ahab came to power, Judah had about 100 years of kings described as doing what was right in the sight of the Lord, though some had their problems for sure. Ahaz would break that streak, for he would do evil in the sight of the Lord, but walked in the ways of the kings of Israel in following after idolatry. He even went so far as to make his son pass through the fire, something specifically banned in Leviticus 18, verse 21. Now, what is being described here is Ahaz's participation in the worship of Molech. The pagan god Molech was worshipped by heating a metal statue representing the god until it was red hot, then placing a living infant on the outstretched hands of the statue, while beating drums drowned out the screams of the child until it burned to death. It was an abomination to God, and is certainly reason enough for God to allow Israel and Syria to oppress the nation. For Israel and Syria, removing Ahaz and installing someone who would help them in their fight with Assyria would be a bonus for them. But for God, using the ambition of these two nations to punish Judah's sin was the first order of business. And in the beginning, they were largely successful. 2 Kings mentions that Pekah and Rezin captured some cities, including Elath, and expelled the inhabitants of Judah from it. Recall that Elath bordered the Red Sea in the south, and thus was Judah's access to the ocean in the south. It had been restored to Israel by Uzziah, Ahaz's grandfather, and so losing it would have been a big blow to Ahaz. 2 Chronicles tells us that the damage to Ahaz was much worse than that, for in one day of battle, Ahaz lost 120,000 men. From chapter 26, we learned that Uzziah had an army numbering 307,500, and so if that number was anywhere around the same, Ahaz would have lost 40% of his army, or 2/5. Those are staggering losses and severely weakened an already weak Ahaz. What's more, Israel also took captive 200,000 women, sons, and daughters from Judah, along with much spoil. But even though Israel and Syria had done all of this, they had not succeeded in deposing Ahaz. Why? Well, we're going to find that out in the next few lessons. But in short, it was because it was not the Lord's will. It was the Lord's will to punish Judah, but not to annihilate her. Her sins were not yet full, and the king that would arise after Ahaz would succeed in bringing her back. For Israel, punishment was coming, and it was coming at the hands of Syria. Before that, though, we're going to find a prophet of God being sent to Israel in order to give them a message from the Lord concerning the hostages they took from Judah. We'll find out what that message was, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 2 Chronicles chapter 28, verses 9 to 15, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.